Most people believe that understanding others comes from listening to what they say, yet words rarely reveal the entire truth. From the moment people learn to communicate, they are trained to speak in ways that protect themselves rather than in ways that expose their deeper reality. A person may say they are fine when inside they feel broken, or they may appear confident when they are terrified of being dismissed. Language becomes a shield, not a window. To truly read someone, one must learn to notice what is beneath the surface. Every human being creates a mask to survive within society. This mask is not necessarily an act of dishonesty. Rather, it is a defense mechanism to avoid rejection and to secure belonging. Behind the polite smile, the calm tone, or the exaggerated display of strength is often a fragile truth. What a person presents outwardly is rarely identical to what they carry within. The tragedy is that many people are not even aware of how often they perform. They become actors in their own lives, shaped by habits, fear, and survival instincts. Yet these masks are not perfect. They slip in subtle ways, and it is in those small cracks where truth emerges. A slight hesitation before answering a question, an uncomfortable laugh that lasts too long, or a sudden change of subject can tell more about a person than their carefully chosen words. When someone reveals tension, they reveal themselves. What makes a person uncomfortable is often the most direct route to understanding who they are beneath the mask. Criticism is another powerful clue. What a person despises in others often reflects what they struggle to accept in themselves. If someone is endlessly mocking arrogance, it may be because they are uncertain about their own worth. If someone constantly attacks dishonesty, it may be because they have not yet confronted the lies they tell themselves. When one learns to see criticism not simply as judgment, but as confession, human behavior becomes easier to understand. The qualities people hate the most are often mirrors of the battles they are fighting internally. Silence is also louder than words. People often believe that speaking more reveals more truth, yet silence often carries the heaviest meaning. When someone pauses for too long, avoids answering a question, or responds with phrases that feel rehearsed, it is often because the truth lies in what they refuse to speak. Vulnerability is frightening, and silence becomes a way to keep those fears hidden. Listening to what is not said can be just as revealing as listening to what is spoken. Displays of virtue can be equally deceptive. The louder someone proclaims their morality, their goodness, or their purity, the more one should question the motive behind it. Genuine goodness rarely needs applause. Often, an exaggerated show of virtue is not about truth, but about power. Correcting others, preaching constantly, or demanding recognition for one's morality can hide the need to feel superior. True strength and true kindness are quiet. They exist without the need for an audience. Another important truth is that people do not lie to others before they lie to themselves. The phrases "I am fine," "I do not care," or "I am over it" are rarely aimed at deception of another person. They are aimed at convincing the self. Repeating such lines again and again becomes a way to cope with difficult emotions. Self-deception is often a survival strategy, not an act of malice. When one learns to see these inconsistencies as signals rather than as tricks, it becomes possible to understand that the lies spoken to others are only extensions of the lies rehearsed within. Finally, one must understand that superiority often hides inferiority. A person who constantly reminds everyone of their accomplishments, who interrupts conversations to assert their opinion, or who casually diminishes others, is rarely acting from confidence. They are acting from fear. The throne of superiority is often built to cover a deep sense of inadequacy. Real confidence has no need to compete. It is steady, calm, and does not depend on comparison. When someone insists on proving their power, it usually means they are terrified of losing it. When you look closely, it becomes clear that much of human behavior is driven not by conscious desire, but by unconscious fear. People often over-explain themselves, dominate conversations, or disappear into silence, not because they truly want to, but because they are terrified of being ignored, rejected, or humiliated. Fear of abandonment, fear of losing status, and fear of not being enough sit quietly beneath the surface of countless actions. If you want to understand someone, do not only ask what they desire, ask instead what they are afraid of losing. Fear is often the invisible force that shapes their decisions. Criticism once again reveals deeper truths. When someone constantly ridicules or mocks a particular quality in others, they are usually fighting a hidden battle with that same quality inside themselves. The man who mocks emotional expression is often struggling with his own suppressed feelings. The woman who belittles appearances may secretly feel trapped by her own reflection. Human judgment is almost never entirely about the other person. It is usually an indirect confession of personal pain. By following the thread of a person's criticisms back to their origin, you can often uncover the wounds they are trying hardest to bury. False confidence is another mask that deserves attention. At first glance, some people appear absolutely sure of themselves. They speak with authority, remain composed in difficult settings, and seem in control of every moment. Yet if you observe more carefully, tension appears in small ways: the tightness of the jaw, the defensive response when challenged, or the endless need to prepare in advance. These are not signs of peace, but of guilt. The certainty is a performance meant to conceal unresolved regret or deep insecurity. Real confidence does not need to defend itself so fiercely. When confidence feels exaggerated, it often hides a story that the person is desperate to keep unseen. Exaggeration in general is one of the clearest signs of inner doubt. When someone insists with great force that they never care what others think, it usually means that they care very deeply. When someone proclaims that they are always happy, it often means they are fighting unhappiness in silence. Extremes of language often signal imbalance. The more absolute the statement, the more fragile the truth beneath it. Exaggeration is like a loud voice trying to cover a trembling whisper. If you want to know what a person is hiding, pay attention to the things they claim too loudly. The desire for control offers another insight. Some people need to manage every detail, to dominate their environment, or to dictate the behavior of others. This craving does not arise from genuine strength. It comes from fear of chaos within. When someone feels unstable inside, they attempt to create order outside. Micromanagement, rigidity, and obsession with rules are often less about capability and more about desperation. Instead of being intimidated by such people, recognize that their controlling nature is a shield against their own inner fragility. Social performance has become one of the clearest signs of emptiness. In a world filled with curated images and endless updates, many people live as if life were a stage. The constant need to be seen, the endless declarations of joy, or the carefully constructed identity online may appear powerful, but it often signals a deep fear of invisibility. True wholeness does not need constant performance. The louder the display, the more desperate the need behind it. A person who knows who they are does not require the approval of an audience. When you begin to notice these patterns, your perception changes. Suddenly, you can walk into a room and recognize that interruptions may signal fear of being forgotten. Endless boasting may reveal hidden wounds, and exaggerated certainty may be the cover for guilt. Reading people is not about exposing them for weakness or about gaining advantage. It is about compassion. The more clearly you see someone's hidden fears, the less likely you are to treat them with hostility. To see another person honestly is to see their humanity. The responsibility lies in what you do with this awareness. Once you begin to see through masks, you cannot return to blindness. Every interaction becomes an opportunity either to judge or to extend grace. Behind arrogance, you can see the wounded child. Behind cruelty, you can recognize unhealed fear. The choice is not whether you will see these things, but how you will respond once you do. Understanding people deeply should not make you manipulative. It should make you uncheckable, because when you see clearly, you no longer react in anger, you respond with wisdom. Human beings often believe that their words and arguments are guided by logic, but beneath most opinions lies a wound. A person who declares that love does not exist may be carrying the pain of rejection. Someone who insists that trust is foolish may have been betrayed in ways that left lasting scars. People use reasoning and language to justify what their emotions have already decided. If you want to understand another person's worldview, do not stop at what they claim. Ask what event, what loss, or what heartbreak shaped that belief. Beneath every strong opinion, there is usually an old injury that has not fully healed. The way someone reacts to weakness provides a powerful window into their character. Many are polite to those who hold authority or status, but their true nature is revealed in how they treat people who cannot defend themselves. If a person mocks vulnerability, it is often because they are afraid of their own fragility. If they punish others for mistakes, it is likely because they were never allowed to make mistakes themselves. True strength is not shown by dominating others. It is shown by restraint, patience, and the ability to offer compassion when cruelty would be easier. The fear of being forgotten drives many behaviors that appear as confidence. Some people seem to demand attention in every room they enter, through their clothes, their stories, or their constant performance. At first, this looks like high self-esteem, yet often it is rooted in a deeper terror of invisibility. To be ignored, to feel erased, or to live without leaving a mark becomes unbearable, so the person creates constant noise in the hope of being remembered. This is not vanity, but a cry for recognition. When you see this clearly, judgment turns into understanding. Envy also hides within many forms of hostility. People do not always attack out of hatred. They often attack because they secretly admire, but feel they can never achieve the same. The colleague who mocks another's success, the friend who criticizes someone's freedom, or the stranger who gossips about another's confidence is often in silent pain. To see another living the life you abandoned or denied yourself can be unbearable. So instead of celebrating, one chooses destruction. Envy is unspoken desire disguised as contempt. When you recognize this, both in others and within yourself, you become immune to small-minded attacks. Much of adult life is not the product of new beliefs, but the continuation of old roles. A child who is never listened to often grows into an adult who never listens. A child who is punished for emotions becomes cold and detached in adulthood. A child who had to earn love becomes someone who constantly performs to secure affection, even when it exhausts them. People often think they are living by reason, but they are repeating patterns from childhood. Behavior is biography, and the past quietly writes the present until it is faced with awareness. Patterns are not random. They are confessions. A person who withdraws whenever a relationship becomes serious is revealing a fear of closeness. A person who works endlessly without pause is revealing a fear of stillness. A person who flirts constantly but avoids intimacy is confessing a fear of true connection. These are not simply habits. They are unspoken stories about past wounds. If you learn to read patterns, you can understand someone before they ever explain themselves. Their repetition is their way of speaking without words. When you begin to listen at this deeper level, you stop taking things personally. Someone's harsh words are not really about you. They are about their own history. Someone's distance is not always rejection. It may be self-protection. Once you realize that most behaviors are defenses, your perspective shifts. You become less judgmental and more observant. This is not weakness. It is strength. To see another clearly and still choose patience requires far more power than reacting with anger. This journey is not only about reading others. It is also about reading yourself. The same truths that expose the masks of others can uncover your own. Every criticism you hold may point toward your own hidden fears. Every exaggeration you make may reveal your own doubts. Every pattern you repeat may be the confession of a wound you have not faced. To understand others deeply is to hold up a mirror that also reflects your own inner life. The path of clarity is not only about knowing them, it is about awakening to yourself. When you observe more closely, you realize that almost every belief is connected to an unspoken fear. People do not always defend ideas because those ideas are pure logic. They defend them because those ideas are protection. A person who insists that relationships are pointless is often protecting themselves from the pain of abandonment. Someone who argues endlessly about success being meaningless may have been defeated in ways they never processed. If you shift your perspective from asking, "Why do they say this?" to, "What are they afraid of repeating?" you discover that their words are shields rather than attacks. True power is revealed not in moments of victory, but in moments of restraint. If you want to see the essence of someone's character, do not watch how they treat those who can benefit them. Watch how they treat those who are vulnerable, weak, or without influence. A person who shows kindness in the presence of weakness demonstrates strength that is not dependent on status. On the other hand, a person who humiliates or punishes the defenseless shows that they are still at war with their own past. Strength without compassion is not strength at all. It is still fear in disguise. The hunger for attention is often misunderstood as arrogance or vanity, but in reality, it frequently stems from the terror of being invisible. Some people cannot bear the thought that their life might pass unnoticed. They fill the room with stories, color, noise, or constant presence, hoping that the world will acknowledge them. Underneath, there is not only the wish to be admired, but the desperate plea not to be forgotten. If you see attention seeking through this lens, it transforms judgment into empathy. What appears as vanity is often the echo of an old wound. Attacks against others are often reflections of envy. When someone ridicules another's freedom, it is usually because they themselves feel trapped. When someone mocks another's confidence, it is often because they feel small inside. Criticism of others becomes a way of distancing themselves from qualities they secretly wish to embody. Instead of admitting desire, they choose destruction, because it is easier to tear down than to admit longing. If you learn to recognize envy beneath hostility, you will no longer be shaken by petty malice. Instead, you will see the pain that fuels it. Much of what adults do is simply the replay of childhood roles. The patterns of the past repeat because they were the only way to survive at the time. The child who was silenced becomes the adult who does not listen. The child who was punished for feelings becomes the adult who hides them. The child who had to prove their worth becomes the adult who never stops performing. People believe they are making choices based on logic, but in reality, they are often repeating what they were once forced to do. Until those roles are recognized, they remain in control. Every repeated behavior is a confession in disguise. The person who suddenly disappears from relationships is saying, "I am afraid of intimacy." The person who cannot stop working is saying, "I am afraid of stillness." The person who constantly entertains but never reveals themselves is saying, "I am afraid of being known." Patterns are a language of their own. They are messages sent by wounds that have never been given words. When you learn to interpret them, you can hear someone's truth even when they believe they are hiding it. Once you learn this, you stop making the mistake of personalizing other people's actions. When someone lashes out, you realize that it is their history speaking, not an accurate reflection of you. When someone withdraws, you see that it is their defense, not a rejection of your value. This awareness removes the sting of their behavior. You no longer need to take it as an attack. You can see the wound without becoming entangled in it. This perspective does not make you weaker. It makes you more centered. The most transformative realization is that these truths are not only about others, they are also about yourself. Every mask you have ever worn, every exaggeration you have ever used, and every criticism you have ever made carries the same hidden confessions. If you look at your own patterns, you will find the stories of your own fears and wounds. To see others clearly is to begin to see yourself with the same clarity. And in that recognition lies the possibility of freedom, because what you understand, you are no longer controlled by. Every human carries beliefs that are less about truth and more about protection. A person may claim that loyalty is impossible because they were once betrayed. Another may declare that kindness is weakness because they were hurt when they dared to be gentle. These beliefs are armor, not reality. They are shaped by moments of pain that left deep marks on the mind. When you hear someone defend a harsh worldview, listen for the wound beneath it. The argument is only the surface. The pain is the foundation. How someone responds when they see weakness is perhaps the purest reflection of their inner state. It is easy to show respect to those who hold authority, wealth, or power. The true test comes when one is faced with someone fragile, someone who makes mistakes, or someone who cannot return the favor. A person who chooses kindness in that moment shows maturity and strength. A person who chooses cruelty shows that they are still chained to their own unresolved battles. Restraint in the presence of weakness is one of the highest forms of strength. The pursuit of attention is often misread. People assume it is pride, arrogance, or the need to be superior. Yet, at its root, it is usually the fear of being erased. A child who felt invisible often becomes an adult who cannot stop demanding recognition. This demand may come in the form of endless stories, dramatic behavior, or constant displays meant to draw the eye. What seems excessive is often the echo of a silent plea. Do not let me disappear. If you approach such people with this understanding, you move from judgment to compassion. Envy explains many conflicts that appear irrational. People often believe they hate others, when in reality, they are grieving qualities they have abandoned in themselves. A critic of success once wished for success. The critic of freedom once longed to be free. The critic of beauty once desired to feel beautiful. Envy is unspoken admiration locked in chains. To recognize this is to free yourself from the sting of hostility. Their attack is not proof of your weakness. It is proof of their own unfulfilled desire. Much of adult identity is simply the continuation of childhood patterns. The lessons taught through silence, punishment, or conditional love remain alive long after childhood ends. Someone who had to earn affection will perform tirelessly as an adult. Someone who is punished for expressing emotion will bury feelings under layers of logic. The adult believes these are choices, but they are repetitions. Life becomes a stage where childhood scripts are acted out again and again until awareness interrupts the cycle. Patterns are the secret diary of the unconscious mind. They reveal fears that words cannot. A person who avoids closeness is confessing their fear of abandonment. A person who cannot stop working is confessing their fear of emptiness. A person who entertains but never allows intimacy is confessing their fear of rejection. These confessions are not spoken, yet they are repeated endlessly. If you learn to watch carefully, you will hear them more clearly than any speech. The power of recognizing these truths lies in how you respond. Instead of reacting with anger, you begin to respond with insight. You realize that cruelty is often self-defense, arrogance is often insecurity, and silence is often fear. This awareness allows you to hold your center in situations where others lose theirs. By refusing to take their masks personally, you become grounded and calm. You stop being controlled by the performance of others because you see through it. Perhaps the most profound realization is that the patterns you notice in others are also alive within yourself. Your own criticisms, your own exaggerations, and your own repeated habits are messages from wounds you may not yet have faced. To read others is to be reminded to read yourself. When you recognize your own patterns, you give yourself the same gift you extend to others: understanding. In that moment, the cycle of unconscious repetition can be broken, and true growth can begin. Every belief that people carry is tied to a story that shaped them. Logic is often only the final layer painted over earlier pain. When you hear someone insist that emotions are useless, you are often listening to someone who once suffered from being vulnerable. When you hear another claim that trust is foolish, you are hearing the defense of someone who was betrayed. These positions feel like reason, but they are the scars of past experiences wrapped in rational words. If you want to truly understand what someone believes, look for the wound that gave birth to it. How someone treats vulnerability is the clearest test of their character. Many people respect strength, but respect toward weakness is far more revealing. A person who can remain kind to someone powerless has found strength that is rooted in peace rather than fear. On the other hand, a person who mocks or exploits weakness demonstrates that they are still battling their own sense of fragility. Those who punish mistakes often carry the memory of being punished themselves. True strength does not need to crush others. It chooses compassion, even when cruelty would be easier. The need to be noticed is rarely about vanity. More often it is the shadow of a childhood where the person felt invisible. A child who is ignored becomes an adult who demands to be seen in every space. They speak louder, act bigger, and perform constantly because the silence of being unseen is unbearable. They are not asking for attention because they love the spotlight. They are asking for attention because the thought of being forgotten feels like death. What looks excessive is often desperation in disguise. Envy often wears the mask of hostility. People may mock those who are confident, criticize those who succeed, or gossip about those who live freely. Yet beneath the criticism lies longing. It is easier to tear down another person than to admit admiration. To envy someone is to be reminded of the parts of yourself that you abandoned or were told you could not have. This creates pain, and that pain turns into attack. If you recognize envy in others, you stop taking it personally. If you recognize envy in yourself, you stop letting it control you. Adult life often disguises itself as a rational choice, yet much of it is repetition. The roles learned in childhood continue to act themselves out again and again. The silenced child becomes the silent adult. The child who earned conditional love becomes the adult who never feels enough. The child who is punished for emotions becomes the adult who hides behind intellect. Until these roles are recognized, people continue to play them unconsciously. They believe they are choosing, but in truth they are repeating. Patterns do not lie. They reveal what words cannot. A person who constantly withdraws from closeness is telling you they are terrified of intimacy. A person who overworks is telling you they are afraid of stillness. A person who laughs loudly while hiding sadness is confessing that joy has become performance. These patterns are not random. They are living evidence of history. If you learn to see them, you will read confessions that were never spoken aloud. When you stop seeing behavior as random and begin to see it as patterned confession, your reactions change. Instead of responding with anger, you begin to respond with curiosity. Instead of blaming, you begin to understand. Anger loses its hold because you realize the insult, the rejection, or the silence is not about you. It is about their own fear. In this awareness, you gain calmness that cannot be easily disturbed. Seeing through the performance of others gives you the ability to remain steady. The journey of seeing through others inevitably brings you back to yourself. Every time you identify a pattern in someone else, you are reminded to look for the same within. Every criticism you hear may echo in your own voice. Every mask you notice may resemble the ones you wear. To study others is to study the self, and to offer grace to others is to remember that you, too, are shaped by fears and wounds. The path of clarity is not only external, it is deeply internal. Every person you meet is shaped not only by their choices, but also by the stories of their past. Behind every mask lies a childhood role that was once necessary for survival. These roles follow people into adulthood without their awareness. The child who had to fight for approval becomes the adult who constantly performs for recognition. The child who is punished for mistakes becomes the adult who cannot forgive imperfection in others. The child who longed for attention but never received, it becomes the adult who demands to be noticed. These behaviors may seem irrational, but they are simply repetitions of old scripts that have not yet been rewritten. When you begin to observe people through this perspective, you start to see that what appears as arrogance may be the echo of insecurity, and what appears as distance may be the residue of rejection. People often do not know why they behave as they do. They believe they are acting from logic, yet their actions are guided by memories that were never resolved. To read someone is to recognize that their present choices are often ghosts of their past experiences. In this recognition, judgment gives way to patience. Patterns, once recognized, become the most reliable form of truth. Someone may deny their fears or claim to have moved on, but their actions continue to confess otherwise. A person who repeatedly withdraws from closeness is speaking through avoidance. A person who endlessly fills their life with noise is confessing their fear of silence. A person who constantly seeks validation is revealing the emptiness that lingers within. Patterns are like an unending letter written by the unconscious, repeating the same lines until someone finally listens. If you want to understand another person, you must listen not only to their words, but to the rhythm of their life. The choices they make, the relationships they build, and the reactions they repeat are all messages from beneath the surface. This kind of listening requires patience and humility. It is not about labeling someone or trapping them in an explanation, but about recognizing that behind every defense there is a story. When you listen in this way, you transform not only your perception of others, but also the way you move through the world. The greatest shift comes when you realize that nothing others do is truly personal. Their rejection, their anger, their silence, or their performance is not aimed directly at you. It is the expression of their own wounds and fears. When you begin to see this clearly, the power of their actions over you fades. You no longer feel the need to react with the same energy. Instead, you remain steady, knowing that their behavior is about their history, not your worth. This awareness does not make you passive. Instead, it makes you stronger. By refusing to be trapped by the masks of others, you maintain your center. You can respond with clarity rather than reflex. You can extend compassion without losing yourself. The ability to see through performance does not give you control over others, but it gives you mastery over your own reactions. That mastery is true strength. Yet, the journey of seeing others is never complete without turning the mirror inward. The same patterns you notice in those around you exist within yourself. The same fears you recognize in others are often present in your own heart. Every time you point out a mask, you are invited to reflect on your own. To understand deeply is to practice honesty with yourself. Without that step, the insights remain incomplete. The more you recognize your own patterns, the freer you become. You no longer need to hide behind exaggeration, superiority, or silence. You can admit your fears without being ruled by them. You can see your own wounds without letting them dictate your choices. By understanding yourself in the same way you understand others, you create the possibility of change. The cycle of repetition begins to break, and in its place emerges the chance for a life guided not by fear, but by awareness. Every mask that people wear tells a story, and every repeated behavior is a hidden confession. A person may not have the words to describe their wounds, but their actions reveal them again and again. The one who disappears when intimacy becomes real is admitting a fear of being abandoned. The one who cannot stop achieving is admitting a fear of being worthless without proof. The one who fills every silence with chatter is admitting a fear of being left alone with their thoughts. These behaviors may appear random on the surface, but they are patterns carrying meaning. They are unspoken ways of saying, "This is how I protect myself." Once you begin to see patterns as confessions, you no longer feel deceived by them. You realize that even the most guarded person is telling you the truth through the way they repeat themselves. When someone avoids closeness, it is not rejection of you, but protection of themselves. When someone shows arrogance, it is not to dominate you, but to shield themselves from inadequacy. Seeing this strips away the illusion of malice. It allows you to meet others not with judgment, but with understanding. This perspective changes the way you live. Instead of reacting quickly to the masks of others, you learn to pause. You stop interpreting every harsh word as a personal attack and every silence as deliberate direction. You begin to ask different questions. What fear might be shaping this action? What wound might be hidden beneath this mask? By asking these questions, you gain insight that most people never reach. And with insight comes peace, because clarity removes the need for constant emotional defense. The real transformation, however, is not only in how you see others, but in how you see yourself. Every truth you recognize in someone else is also a mirror reflecting your own hidden patterns. The criticisms you make, the masks you wear, and the behaviors you repeat are all your own confessions. To look at others honestly is to be reminded to look at yourself with the same honesty. What you see in them often points to what you have not yet faced in yourself. This recognition is not meant to bring shame. It is meant to bring freedom. When you finally see your own patterns clearly, you stop being ruled by them. You realize that your exaggerations, your silences, your constant efforts to prove yourself were never weakness. They were your way of surviving. Once you acknowledge this, you can begin to choose differently. You no longer need to live on automatic repetition old scripts. You can write new ones with awareness. The journey of truly reading others is therefore also the journey of awakening to yourself. You begin to understand that judgment of others is often judgment of unaccepted parts of your own being. Admiration of others is often longing for qualities you want to bring alive within yourself. By seeing these connections, you begin to live with greater honesty, humility, and compassion. What you offer to others is what you also offer to yourself. In a world filled with masks, this way of seeing becomes a rare strength. Most people react to the surface of others without ever noticing the depth beneath. But when you learn to see the fear behind cruelty, the wound behind arrogance, and the longing behind envy, you step into a different way of living. You are no longer fooled by appearances, and you are no longer disturbed by the performances people create. Instead, you meet them at the level of humanity, where everyone is fragile and everyone is still trying to be seen. The final truth is that understanding others and understanding yourself are the same path. Every mask you uncover brings you closer to reality. Every wound you recognize reminds you of your own. To live with this awareness is to move through the world with eyes open, heart steady, and mind clear. You do not need to control others, and you do not need to fear them. You simply need to see. And when you see with clarity, you find not only connection with others, but also the freedom to become fully yourself.